50-year-old Terry Grieg from St. Louis.
A friend of mine's husband happens to be a gastroenterologist, so I'd mentioned to him some of these symptoms that I was having.
I remember doing the colonoscopy just kind of in my mind thinking, oh my God, this cannot be happening.
He said, you know, Terry, I really don't know how to tell you this, but I didn't even get very far into the colonoscopy and there was a tumor.
This is as bad as it gets. This is as advanced as it gets. This is what you don't want to hear.
We sat down with my daughter first and told her. And that was, I can't think of anything more difficult to do than to tell your children that you've been diagnosed with cancer. And I knew she would take it really, really hard.
My mom and I are like best friends, so when I found out, I mean, I was completely devastated. I was numb. I thought about, like, is this the last Christmas I'm going to be spending with my mom, or my last, birthday with her? And all just the what ifs popped in my head, and my mind was just racing, and it was awful. It was absolutely awful.
So we cried a lot, hugged a lot the first couple of days, and then after that we said, you know what, we're just not going to take the attitude that we're going to give up, we're going to fight this with everything we have, and the pity party's over. And that was our attitude from that point on.
Stage 4 colon cancer. Chemo, radiation, all while she was training for this race. It was her gateway to feeling that with all that was wrong, there was so much that was still okay with her life.
I have found that my respiratory status has been compromised. Cycling up a hill or running up a hill, I get short of breath and winded. But, I just tell myself I am so grateful that I can even run up a hill or attempt to run up a hill. So, if I have to walk every once in a while instead of run, that's what I do. This is like a dream come true for me. I guess when I cross that finish line and I think about giving my husband and my kids a big hug, I can't imagine what the feeling I'm going to have. A sense of accomplishment, but to me it's just going to be a victory.
"50-year-old Terry Grieg trying to beat cancer."
I feel good.
None of us know how many Christmases they will share, but Terry Grieg and her family will have this day forever.
So a picture, they say, is worth 1,000 words, right? And sometimes I think a video like that is worth like more than 1,000,000. An Ironman, that's what that was. An Ironman is a triathlon. A triathlon is 3 sports: swim, bike, and run. There are many distances: sprint, Olympic, half Ironman, and a full Ironman. And a full Ironman is 2.4-mile swim in open water. It's a 112-mile bike ride, and then a marathon, 26.2-mile run. And so I'll have people say, oh, you mean you do one of those each day, right? And I'll say, oh, no, wouldn't that be great? It's all in one day. So how did I get this like crazy dream to want to do an Ironman? I mean, this showed you what I did, but really, how did I do it? and why. In 2002, my niece came to me and said, I'm going to go run the Chicago Marathon. And at that time, I was married, I had 2 kids, I had a nursing career. I would work out maybe here and there. I was an athlete in high school. But I thought, if she can run a marathon, I can run a marathon. And I even kind of took it a step further, and I thought, I probably can run it faster. And I did. But anyway, we trained together, and my first marathon was in 2002, and that started me on my road of endurance sports. I went on to do a handful of other marathons, and then in 2006, as I was training one evening, actually I qualified for the Boston Marathon, and I was training in the afternoon, and the Ironman program comes on TV. I don't know if many of you have ever seen on NBC that Ironman program. And so I was watching it. And what they do is they feature pro athletes and they feature age groupers. And the age groupers have inspirational stories. And this particular year that I watched it, the one story that struck me was a young man named John Blaze. Now, John Blaze had ALS, and his dream was to do the World Championship Ironman. And he said that no matter what, even though in ALS, when you get out there and you exercise and you push your body to the limits, it accelerates that disease process. Even though it was going to accelerate and bring him closer to death, it was his goal and his dream. And he said, when I get to that finish line, I don't care if I have to crawl, I don't care if I have to roll, I am going to finish this race. And I'll be damned if he didn't get to that finish line and he rolled across. And to this day, of course he passed about a year later, and to this day, pro athletes and age groupers in his honor get down and they roll across that finish line. And I watched that. And the tears came down. And then I said, one day I want to do an Ironman. And I told my husband, I said, I want to do an Ironman. He said, you're crazy. I said, you know, you already do that. I was crazy when you chose me, when we decided to marry. I've always been a little crazy. But he thought that was taking it a little bit overboard. But that was my dream. That was my goal. And so I trained, we just trained a little bit, figured out a little bit more things, got a little smarter, hired a coach, did all kinds, got better equipment, all these different things. In 2008, I went to Louisville, Kentucky, and I did an Ironman. I finished like in 12 hours and 15 minutes, and I came in 5th in the age group, and I was 1 spot short of qualifying for that world championship. 1 spot. I thought, I can do this. I'm just going to train a little harder. I'm going to get a little smarter. I'm going to get a better coach. I'm going to get better equipment. And that's what I did. I took a year, and I trained. I went almost to any length to go and to be the best I could be that day of the race. But that summer in 2009, as I was training, I felt like my feet were like in buckets of cement as I'm going out for a long run, 16, 18, 20 miles. Bucket, 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 heavy, heavy, heavy. And then I got sick, and I really couldn't shake kind of a flu, and I thought, well, I'm overtrained. I'm a year older. All those kinds of things. I had a foot injury. It wouldn't heal. Then I started having some bleeding. I thought, anybody that rides 100 miles on that itty-bitty little bike seat would have some bleeding, right? Could have some problems, so I kind of chalked it off to that. And the reality was, all of the strengths, all the things that I had learned to endure that day to do an Ironman ended up working against me. That mental toughness, that physical resolve. That no matter what, I'm going to go and I'm going to do that Ironman and I'm going to do the best I can. And after that, if I'm still feeling ill, I'll go to the doctor. And so that's what I did. I went that August of 2009, went back and did the Ironman, and I was only 10 minutes slower than the year before, but I didn't qualify for the World Championship. But true to what I had said to myself, I called the doctor, who you saw in the video, Dr. Umrich, and I said, I'm having these symptoms. Now, I was embarrassed. They weren't symptoms that anybody would want to talk about. And he said, let's do a test. And I had the colonoscopy, and you heard what he said. It was bad. It was as bad as it gets. And from there, they took me over to do a CAT scan. And that night, of course, I jumped on the internet. Isn't that what we all do? We go to the internet. We want to find the answers. We're going to diagnose ourselves. We're going to get, how are we going to take care of this? And the only thing I remember, what I saw, was that colorectal cancer, stage 4, it had a 5-year survival rate of 6%. And I thought, you know what? That's not me. I don't need to worry about that. Well, that night, I got a phone call from Dr. Emmerich. He said, Terry, we've gone from a half Ironman to a full Ironman. And he said there were 2 golf ball size tumors in my liver. But you know what? He planted a seed of hope right then and right there when he gave me that awful news. He said, we're not going to give up. We're just going to have a change in plan. We're going to have to get smarter. We're going to have to fight harder. We're going to figure this out. But when he told me that, and you all saw my daughter, that was my first vision. I thought, oh my God, I'm not going to be there when my daughter gets married. I don't know if I saw this in a movie, in a film, or what, but I had this vision right then and there. There was my daughter in her wedding gown. Beautiful, right? Beautiful veil, all white, this mirror in front of her, and there were my sisters telling my daughter, if your mother was here today, she would want you to know how beautiful you are, inside and out. What a great mother you'll make. All those things I heard my sisters telling her. One of the hardest things you ever have to do is tell your children you have cancer. 2 days later, my husband and I went to church, and there was a message. And the message had to do about an endurance event called Running on the Sun. And it talked about 2 individuals that got to the start line the day of this race. And this particular race was an ultramarathon where they had to run 135 miles in 48 hours. And these 2 individuals, one was a Marine and he had his entire unit there to support him. And the other one was a woman from England and had 1 man there to help her. So the short of the long is the Marine gets disqualified at mile 56 because he's dehydrated and needs fluids and he can go no further. And you know what happens? Those troops, those Marines in his unit, they find out about Maria de Seuss, the woman that's alone, that has the 1 person that's going to help her and get her 48 hours to that finish line of 130 miles, and they jump in and they help her. And by this time, she has blisters all over her feet, no toenails, she's wearing Tevas. They literally lift her up and stand her up, and they form this half circle around her. In some way, somehow, she gets to the finish line, and she crosses. And she turns around, and she looks at all those Marines that helped her, not physically, but supported her in all the other ways that they could. And she said, I couldn't have done it without all of you. I couldn't have done it without all of you. And that night, I woke up, and I thought, you know what? I can't do this one alone. I may have done an Ironman. I may be a badass. I may be all those things. But this one, I don't think I can do alone. So I formed an army. And I had prayer warriors. And I had snipers. And I had foot soldiers. And I had people in the mess hall. And you name it. They all stepped forward. And that's how I did it. I also never gave up hope or never gave up that dream of doing that world championship. So 2 years into my diagnosis, I never quit training. I made the decision every day to wake up in the morning, to get out of bed, to make that day the best day it could be. And I got the email to the gentleman, the executive producer of that show, and I wrote him a note. I said, I have 3 things on my bucket list. I said, 1, I want to celebrate 25 years of marriage. 2, I want to be alive to see my children get married. And 3, I would love to be an inspirational athlete at the World Championship in 2011. Now that is a crazy dream. I mean, it's like big, bold, crazy dreams. And do you know, I got an email that next morning, an invitation. So 3 months later, there I am on my way to Kona, Hawaii for the World Championship Ironman. 35 members of my Army. Crazy, crazy. And we get there, and you saw what happened. You saw that crossing the finish line. You saw that dream come true. I use the word hope a lot. Hope. To me, hope means how ordinary people endure. How ordinary people endure. So you might think, and people have told me, and they feel, and I don't know, well, actually, the nurse that took care of me, she called me unusual. Unusual. And then I looked at her like, really? Unusual? She said, okay. I mean extraordinary. And I think a lot of people that see what I've done and what I've been able to accomplish would consider that extraordinary. But you know what extraordinary is? It's ordinary with a little extra in front of it. And you know, I think we can all be ordinary with a little extra in front of it. The Ironman motto is anything is possible. And my motto is powered by hope. So powered by hope, anything is possible. Everybody has a dream. Everybody has a cancer and adversity, right? I told you, I tell you about my why, my how. So anybody here remember Diana Nyad, the woman that swam from Cuba to Miami? Now, she just didn't wake up and decide to do that. She attempted that in her early 20s, and then when she was reaching 60, she decided she was going to attempt it again. And she did it. And I don't know if any of you remember, but when she came up out of that ocean and onto the beach, and she is swollen, and she is just sea-legged, and I don't know, she had been out there, whatever, 70 plus hours, 110 miles in the water, all the contraption on her to keep her safe, and she gets up, and people are trying to help her, and she's pushing them away, right? She holds up 3 fingers. 3 fingers. She wants to tell everybody 3 things. She says, 1, you're never too old. And I like to say you're never too young. You're never too old, and you're never too young to dream. Big, big, bold dreams, to accomplish them. She said, number 2, never alone. You can't do it alone. She said, years they mapped out the courses. I mean, I had my Army. I mean, never alone. You can't make it alone. And number 3, never, ever give up. Never give up. So, powered by hope, anything is possible, and may all your dreams come true. Thank you.